Today, I'm just back from Costa Rica shooting for a couple of weeks with Nikon Z9, the 800PF, my buddy David's new 400 2.8S. I'm going to share some insights, some lessons learned, some sights and sounds from the trip. Well, hey everybody, I'm back. It was an amazing adventure in the jungle, practicing for a couple of weeks with some of the coolest new gear out there, an amazing group of people, both our local guides and the workshop participants. Got to spend some time with my family in the jungle, and I learned a ton of stuff. Shooting with new gear, shooting wildlife for just days on end, shooting with other people and sharing perspectives, and just, it was a great learning experience, not only for the workshop participants on this one, but for myself as well. And I have a lot of fun new content to share with everyone over the weeks ahead that really come as a consequence of just shooting day after day, thousands of frames of wildlife in dark, deep jungle conditions. It was a great adventure. And while I'm tired and a bit jet lagged, I'm really feeling rejuvenated, refreshed, and excited by the experience. I think everybody had an awesome time. Just to remind everybody, I went down there, I just have my Z50, which I carried a bit with my family, a few lenses, and what I used the most, I used the Z50 with the 50 to 250 lens a little bit. I used the 100 to 400 a lot on the Z9, and then the workhorse for me has been this 800 PF, this brand new lens I took down there, and I have shot tens of thousands of frames through this in burst mode, dark conditions, and gotten some really great stuff. My friend David Archer was down there helping me teach the workshop. He had his brand new 400 2.8 with the built-in 1.4 teleconverter. That is an amazing lens as well. We're gonna do some content comparing those two lenses in the not so distant future. Probably next week we'll have that together when we really get our images culled down to go over and talk about them. I want to put the word out that speaking of David Archer and I in this trip, Tuesday the 21st, that's Tuesday, June 21st, this next Tuesday, we're doing an office hours, big free get together. You can join us on Zoom where we can all see each other's faces. You can also participate and watch on YouTube live, and it'll be archived up on YouTube. And we're going to talk about some of the images from this trip, go through some, talk about experiences shooting, and take your questions. And I imagine we'll talk a fair bit about these new super telephotos that have come out for the Nikon faithful. We also have people shooting Canon, we have people shooting Sony, we have people shooting Leica on this trip. There was a lot of fun gear, challenging circumstances, but really rewarding. Tons of wildlife, deep jungle, just really cool macro stuff too. So, I want to just kind of kick it off maybe by showing a few little glimpses of what Costa Rica is like. It's just so beautiful. We were in the southwestern corner near the Panama border on the Pacific Ocean, the Osa Peninsula, with just a great crew, some with my family. You'll probably hear my kids' voices in some of this, but check out some of the sights and sounds of Costa Rica. Peppy, let me see.
I have a whole bunch. They're trying to get out.
Look at they're sideways. Oh my god, they are so cute. They are so cute, Peppy. But I think they're freaked out, don't you think?
No, Mama, that's off me now.
I told you to watch your feet. You watch your feet. Okay, watch your feet.
Mom,
Okay, let's go follow.
I am watching.
Okay, come on, let's go
Guys,
follow.
they're leaving. They're
Okay, we're gonna go.
Here, let's get, stay out of Poppy's way. Stay out of Poppy's way.
I'm
over
thinking
here.
those holes are next.
Yeah, they hurt.
Why?
Amazing.
Son las 2:15, la hora en la mejor, y ya se encuentra con nosotros
aquí están las quesadillas.
Gracias.
So, Hudson, did Woody tell you about the...
Oh, it's down below the leaves for me.
All right, so I think you got the impression, looking through some of those images and some of that video, that the 800 PF was my primary shooting tool, the Z9 with the 500 PF. And I did learn to appreciate the vertical grip. You know, I found that I didn't need a monopod at all on this journey. It's much quicker to find and hone in on a shot with this long a lens handheld, and this lens is light enough and its weight is centered far enough back that it's comfortable to work with and handhold for long durations. I even shot video, as you saw, with it handheld. There's a little tiny bit of shake, but the vibration reduction was just amazing. I found that using burst shooting mode, I could get sharp frames if my subject wasn't moving all the way down at times to a 30th of a second. Pretty consistently get a few frames from each burst at 60th of a second, and I could rely on a 100th of a second, which is amazing with an 800 millimeter optic handheld. I heard people, when I talked about how I was going to carry gear in the jungle, concerned about hanging such a big piece of glass from my Luma Labs QD loop strap. That was not a concern at all. I think one thing people need to know about these QD connections, whether you're using Luma's just amazing, simple, easy to use strap, or some of the other straps that engage a QD, is that the QD port was really designed for the military, and our US military tends to carry their sniper rifles and rifles from this. It is burly. There are 4 bearings that would have to fail in this thing. There's no way for it to come loose. It swivels really easily. It's easy on, it's easy off. I carried it at my side like this a ton, and the thing that I love about the Luma strap with a big lens like this is I could just easily cinch it to where it's tight and I can move easily. Then when I want to shoot, I just release that. It's up to my eye to shoot however I want. Sometimes shooting videos, I just kind of adjust the tension so that I could push against it a little bit and just be a little more solidly braced. Even shooting stills, it sort of lets you push into that strap, and you can adjust the length so easily with this little slider that you get just right, and you sort of learn where to put it, that you can brace with it up against your eye and get even more stability by pushing out against that strap. So it's just a really, really nice, versatile way to carry this. And a lot of the times I was just running around with it handheld, ready to go, you know, maybe keep the tripod foot up high so that you can use your memory settings and everything else on this lens. And then when I wanted to move, it was as easy, or switch cameras and use the 100 to 400, it's as easy as just plugging it into that strap that's comfortably hanging on my side, and you're ready to do whatever else hands-free. Really, really nice system. So if people think that these QD ports are in any way something to be concerned about, they're not. I bounced all over the jungle for 2 weeks with this rig hanging from it with not a concern. You know, I think that one of the things that I learned on this trip that's just foundational, and it's something that we preach a lot here on this channel and in the office hours, and my friend Rick and I and David and I out on workshops, is practice. And I think that one of the great things about this trip was just being out shooting so much. Costa Rica, like a good African safari, is just a completely wilderness immersive trip filled with wildlife. You've got monkeys in the trees around you. You've got all of these different lizards and snakes and bugs and, you know, leaf cutter ants, and just a constant parade of wildlife to shoot all around you. So you find yourself driving along, and all of a sudden, boom, there are scarlet macaws, and they're feeding on these nuts on palm trees. You're driving around, boom, all of a sudden there's monkeys flitting all around in the trees, and it's challenging, changing light conditions. Just the ability to be constantly shooting for days on end, adjusting your technique, working with your gear. You know, the first days of the trip using this lens, I would see a monkey in a tree, and I would pop up and say, well, that's not the monkey. What? Oh, there's that limb, you know, until by day 5, I was popping up and being very close to the monkey and being able to move a little bit and find it. To the final part of the trip, I'm so used to using this big, long piece of glass that, whoop, there it is. You know, and that is just a simple matter of practice. And the more trips where you're able to go out and practice, the more ways you find to practice around your home, wherever you happen to be, the better primed you're going to be when the situations are just amazing and you really want to be able to get out there and capture it. So, you know, whether you're shooting with an 800 millimeter lens or a 100 to 400 or a 50 to 250, the more you practice, the better you're going to be with that particular piece of kit. David and I are going to do an entire approach in the scene about comparing the 800 PF to the 400 2.8. Now, the 400 2.8 is in a little different class with the amount of money that it costs. It's a little bit heavier, a little bigger around. The 800 is just slightly longer. They both use the same case. You can fit a Z9 and the lens into that case. Both of them are wonderful, wonderful lenses. I will say, I think that if funds are no resource, the 400 2.8 is a little more versatile. It will take the teleconverters. It has the built-in 1.4 teleconverter. It's easier to frame things up with a 400. You can jump into crop mode with the Z9 and still have 19 megapixels to work with. The 800, however, for people who love birds and animals that are far distant away, you know, the bear shooter in Alaska, the person who loves small birds that stay higher in trees, this lens is amazing for birds. It really is a fabulous birding lens. It was a little bit challenging in the deep jungle forest just because of the lower light, the f6.3. I found myself really working at how slow can I handhold this when my subjects were still. If a subject was just staring at me, staying in position, I would start rolling my shutter speed back. You know, I would fire a burst at 125th of a second, chimp, look at the images in through my viewfinder, see if I had some sharp ones, drop it to a 60th of a second, fire, until I got to the point where I realized, you know, you can, if the conditions are really dark, find a few frames that are sharp out of your burst at a 30th of a second with this combo. 60th of a second, regularly find frames that are sharp. 100th of a second, find that most of the frames are sharp. 250th of a second, pretty much all of the frames are sharp unless your subject's moving. You know, you just practice, practice, practice. That's going to be the mantra that I'm going to keep oft repeating on this trip. I think working with other photographers, sharing gear, sharing tips, watching each other work, looking at each other's images, you know, that's what I love about leading these workshops, and going to a place as exotic as Costa Rica was a wonderful, wonderful way to practice that all together and learn from one another. And I will also say, I just have to give mad props to our local Costa Rican guide, Dennis, who was just incredible. I'm going to be talking a lot more with him in the future on this channel. I want to bring him on via the technological magic that we have with Zoom, and get him on talking to all of you, because I learned so much about wildlife photography from him. I'm going to be sharing in some upcoming episodes some updated settings that I've come up with for the Z9 for shooting action. As a consequence of working here, I've expanded my hybrid mode a little bit more to find a quick way to move from having wide area on the shutter to 3D tracking on the back button to having single point on the shutter that can convert to 3-point tracking in the back, all with just a press of a button. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about a thing that I learned from Dennis that I will forever, ever owe him, which is the ability to cull through your images fast when you're shooting these bursts of action or wildlife, and identify just the ones that are the keepers as you go, and delete everything else. So that when you get back, instead of having 7,500 images to cull through at the end of the day, you have several hundred. It makes all the difference in the world on a trip like this. It makes the difference between sleeping and reviewing your images. You know, a lot of times in my past shooting wildlife, you just get behind and you can't keep up, and you're thinking, my gosh, and you're not learning as much from the day before as you should have. And I've got a technique that just, it's a little freaky when you start off doing it, but man, oh man, is it great for these wildlife shoots. So lots of fun stuff coming up in future episodes. I hope that you've enjoyed just a little sight and taste of Costa Rica and some of the enthusiasm that I have, because this was a great trip, great people, and I learned a ton. Can't wait to share more of it with all of you. Thanks so much for watching. I want to thank everyone who's subscribed to this channel, shares, likes the videos. Hit me up if you have questions in the comments. I'm always active looking through it, what everybody has to say. Also, you can always catch me on email. Quick announcement, I know we've got a lot of news coming out of Yellowstone. We have a full workshop and a big waiting list on that one. We're talking to the Park Service. They're super busy right now, but we're actively watching all of that. And we'll be making adjustments and figuring that all out and communicating with anyone in that workshop. And I hope that anyone who has plans for Yellowstone can either spend some time in the lower part of the park, or at least find something else that's wonderful to do. I'm thinking that the Tetons is a great alternative, a wonderful, wonderful place to shoot wildlife with insane backdrops. So we'll be talking more about all of that as time moves on. Again, workshops are pretty much sold out this year. There's a couple spots left in the Tetons, but you can sign up and show your interest in the 2023 workshop slate, which includes some really fun wildlife opportunities in Charleston, South Carolina, Glacier National Park. So look into that. You can find all that stuff at hudsonhenry.com/workshops. And if you want advance notice about those 2023 workshops before we start lighting those up for signups, let us know by just clicking in there and requesting advance notice. They've been selling out really fast when we launch workshops. So, all right, everyone. Thanks so much. I hope everyone's staying safe, staying creative. It's a fun time of year all over the globe, whether you're at sort of the tail end of fall or the tail end of spring and beginning of summer. Those are a couple of my favorite times to shoot, so I hope you're out enjoying it. And we'll see you next week.